Islamophobia. It seems to be a hot topic and a term that's thrown out there a lot, and it's ill-defined and important that we think about what it means and why it's being used, hence this video. So hello everyone and welcome back to this channel. I really hope you'll stick around for to the end of this video with me, because I'm presenting an angle that I haven't seen out there, and I haven't come across any of these arguments, so I'm hoping that maybe this will shed some light and help people in the West realize the true insidious agenda behind using the word Islamophobia. And we can use our powers of freedom of speech and critical thinking to counteract this word, which ultimately is jihad in itself. Quick disclaimer, and I know I do this a lot, but I am not here addressing all Muslims. I am not putting all Muslims in a terrorist category. I do not judge Muslims as a collective group, and in fact, I oppose putting certain types of people in a group and then judging the group as a whole. I think it's a convenient tactic that's used when people just don't want to think. So that it's easier to smear or protect a group, and I just don't do that. I will judge each Muslim on an individual basis, just like I judge every person I meet on an individual basis. Groupthink is just not my thing, and we've had enough collectivization in the 20th century and now enough identity politics in the 21st century. So I will judge you based on who you are, how you behave, what you say, regardless of what group you come from or what color of skin you have. So I hope this puts a rest to all the racist accusations I've been getting in the comments. But hey, feel free to write whatever you like in the comment section, because I also believe in total freedom of speech. So let's go over the definitions of Islamophobia. And from the research that I've done, there seems to be two definitions. There's the literal one, and then there's the contextual one. So the literal definition, it's simple. It's a phobia of Islam. So it's an extreme or irrational fear of Islam. And since Islam is the Quran and the Sunnah of Muhammad, it's an extreme or irrational fear of Allah and Muhammad. Now, to understand the context of Islamophobia, it's important to understand how the mainstream media and the Western governments work right now. When an instigator, part of a minority group in the West, does something bad, like a crime if you want, it's the media and the government position to blame whoever reacts to the thing that the guy did. They won't blame the bad guy who did the bad thing. They're going to blame the person who reacted or called out the thing. So here's an example. If someone breaks into your home in Nova Scotia and you have the audacity to try to defend yourself, your family, you will be charged because you victimized the attackers by defending yourself and your family. I'll put an article in the comment section, check it out. It sounds insane, but it's actually what's happening. So according to this context, you are supposed to welcome home invaders and submit to whatever they wish to do to you. Another example of this cognitive dissonance that is often displayed by the media and the government is how they endorse illegal immigrants who break the law to come into our country by coming here illegally. But the media will attack and slander Canadians who oppose this. They'll call opposition to illegal immigration far right, or literally Hitler, or white supremacists. So this is how the media works now. There are many, many more examples of this. But in the context of Islam, if a Muslim does jihad terror by slamming a truck of peace into bystanders, or detonates a bomb of love and understanding at a rock concert, or shoots people with bullets of interfaith dialogue, the media will attack the people who point out this is jihad terror done by a Muslim in the name of Islam. Even if the actual Muslim says, I'm a Muslim who did this in the name of Allah, in the name of jihad, and then ISIS will come and claim responsibility for the attack, the official position will still be that this Muslim misunderstood Islam, or that it had nothing to do with Islam, and then they'll brand anybody who doesn't go along with this as Islamophobic. So Islamophobia is used as a weapon in the West. Its goal is to shut down any and all criticism of Islam. Now, if you live in an Islamic land, it's not permissible to criticize Islam, and therefore haram. If Muslims do criticize in Islamic lands, they'll face very, very dire consequences like imprisonment, public lashings, even death. It's a very, very serious crime to criticize Islam, Muhammad, the Sharia, anything in Islamic lands. Islam just wants you to submit to the doctrine, all of it. Don't question it, just submit. Even Islamic scholars say the reason you have to submit is, who are we to question Allah and Muhammad, right? See, Muslim friends, I understand Islam. In the Western countries, Muslims don't have the ability to conduct public lashings or imprison people for criticizing Islam, at least not for now. That could change if the West doesn't wake up to reality of Islamic jurisprudence, so wake up. But they certainly can't behead someone publicly, or do a whole bunch of public lashings, or unleash a mob to kill somebody who is simply accused of criticizing Islam in any Western country. So what are these Islamic scholars to do to enforce their Sharia over here? Well, the answer is introduce Islamophobia as a concept, and then use it whenever somebody criticizes Islam. Get the local governments to betray their own taxpayer citizens and destroy freedom of speech, freedom of conscience from within, so that the only people who currently have the ability and the freedom to take a critical look at the Islamic doctrine, those people are now rendered powerless and completely shut down. In the case of Canada, Islamophobia kind of provides Trudeau with more virtue signaling opportunities, which is why I think he's going along with this. But governments in the West, they are under tremendous pressure by Islamic extremist groups to create hate speech laws and accord special protections to Muslims to shield them not against the extremist factions of Islam, but against the reactions that Canadians will have to an Islamic jihad on Canadian soil. So it's more important for the government to protect first the jihadis themselves, then the rest of the Muslims in Canada against the scrutiny of their doctrine, than it is to protect Canadians from Islamic jihad. It's the highest form of betrayal, and the use of the word Islamophobia serves this purpose. I have a fear of Islam because I read the Quran, and I have had the unbelievable privilege and luck of being born and growing up as a Christian in the West. So I understand the Quran, and I understand what it wants to impose on us, and I am against it. I'm a critic of the doctrine of Islam, but I'm not Islamophobic. My fear is not irrational, but it's grounded in 1400 years of Islamic conquests. I don't hate all Muslims, and in fact I offer my support to any Muslim in Canada who has either fled Sharia but still practices the religious side of Islam in the privacy of their homes, their mosque, and they don't seek to impose any of the Sharia on Canadian society. I want to offer my help to any Muslim girl in Canada who doesn't want to wear the hijab in Canada but is forced to by her family. I'm against female genital mutilation. It's a barbaric practice, and it offends womanhood as a whole. I'm against any Muslim men who would beat their wives in Canada as directed in the Quran. I oppose any Muslim family in Canada who marries off their daughter as a child bride. None of this is part of our Canadian values. None of this is part of what we believe in Canada. And it's not Islamophobic to oppose this. So I hold the opinion that the people who accurately describe jihad, terror, and the people who apply critical thinking when studying the doctrine of Islam and who oppose many of the violent components, they are not Islamophobic. So who are the real Islamophobes? Starters, the jihadis themselves. The guys who blow themselves up. I know it's bewildering, isn't it? How in the world can I claim that jihadis are Islamophobic? But I believe they are the true Islamophobes in the literal sense. I've already defined Islamophobia literally as being an extreme or irrational fear of Islam, and Islam being Muhammad and Allah. Well, what happens if you don't submit to Allah and conduct yourself like Muhammad? You burn in the eternal fire pits of hell. You have a book of deeds, and on Judgment Day, Allah will decide if you are granted salvation or if you're going to go rot in hell for all of eternity based on that book of deeds. And in that book, your good deeds have to outweigh your bad deeds. So you as a Muslim, how do you know if you've had enough good deeds to outweigh your bad deeds and guarantee your spot in the Garden of Eden? Well, don't worry, Allah did send down a verse to help you out on that one. And this is it. I'm going to read it right now. Chapter 61, verses 10, 11, and 12. You who believe, shall I direct you to a transaction that will rescue you from a painful punishment? You should believe in God and His messenger and struggle in the way of God with your wealth and your lives. That is better for you, if only you knew. He will forgive you your sins and cause you to enter gardens through which rivers flow, and good dwellings in places in gardens of Eden. That is the great triumph. So right there, if you pay with your life in the cause of God, you will enter automatically into heaven. What is the struggle in the way of God? The goal is to spread Islam, kill the kafirs, so that Islam will dominate the whole world. So blow yourself up by killing non-believers, and you're guaranteed a spot in heaven. Slay and be slain. So these jihadis are so afraid, they have an extreme fear of Allah and His judgment, that they are willing to end their lives in violent jihad to please Allah and secure a spot in heaven. I would argue that this extreme fear, that I think is irrational, makes jihadis Islamophobic in the literal sense of the word. Now, it's funny because the phobias are considered to be a mental illness, and the media and government happen to agree with me on this one because they call it mental illness when a Muslim launches Islamic terror. Read the DSM-5 diagnosis criteria for phobia. You'll see in there, it describes it very well. Now, in the context Islamophobia finds itself in, it's used as a weapon. Now, we already know why Islam is using it as a weapon, but many people here in the West are using it as a weapon too. Not only does it shut down discussions that we could have about this, but it also provides a group to blame. Blame those Islamophobic people over there. Politicians are so afraid to offend or oppose any aspect of Islam that they would rather target law-abiding citizens who criticize the doctrine. Universities, they view Muslims in the West as a protected minority group, and they show great intolerance for people who say anything negative about Islam. So these universities are producing loads of useful idiots. They're throwing into our mix, our society now. These useful idiots know nothing about Islam. They have never read the Quran. They don't even know about the Sunnah of Muhammad. They know nothing about history of jihad. And they have only been exposed to Islam via a friend, a Muslim friend that was super nice, or politicians who claim that Islam is a religion of peace. Yet, these useful idiots who know nothing about the threat that Islam poses will attack people who speak out. I really wish non-Muslims who defend Islam would read the Quran, but they don't. They know nothing, and they feel they have the right to defend Islam. These useful idiots are very, very dangerous in the West, and we have to make sure we educate as many people as we can. But the politicians, they are hired and paid to represent our values and to defend our values. Yet they are so afraid of Islam that they hide the doctrine from you. They are the true Islamophobes. These politicians are willing to sacrifice their own citizens at the altar of Islam. Even here in the West, they are so afraid of either not being elected or being called Islamophobes themselves that they do not only turn a blind eye, but they actively help the spread of Islam by saying it's peaceful and then hiding the identity of perpetrators when they happen to be Muslims. What's worse, they are so afraid of these Islamic groups like Muslim Brotherhood or Hamas or Hezbollah. They would rather appease these groups than fight the doctrine on our own soil. Politicians are so Islamophobic in a contextual way that they will blame the Western girls for dressing too provocatively if they happen to be raped. So I'm calling all feminists on this one. Your governments in the West are blaming girls for what they wear rather than blaming the rapists out of sheer irrational fear of being branded Islamophobic. Politicians will not protect Muslim women they're here in the West and they're trying to westernize. The politicians are the true Islamophobes because they are paid to protect us. Yet they're allowing a totalitarian ideology to take away the freedoms that the West has out of fear of reprisal from Islamic militants. It's treachery on steroids. Anyways, who else is an Islamophobe? Well, the media. Yes, the very people who call us Islamophobes, because just like the politicians, they're paid. In their case, they're paid to report the truth, to report the facts. But they use their positions, their platforms to muddy the waters and to editorialize. Facts have become obsolete in their world, and the narrative is what is important. They're also traitors because of their willingness to hide facts and replace them with opinions, but without telling the consumer. So they're selling opinions as facts, which is very reminiscent of Pravda, the Soviet state-funded propaganda arm news outlet. Like, why would our media do this? Well, they're doing it because they're afraid of the reprisals of the Islamic groups. Their fear is so irrational that they will take a jihadi attack claimed by ISIS and tell you that it was some guy with a long history of mental illness, that no one knows why he did it, and that it certainly had nothing to do with Islam. Then they will follow this in the upcoming weeks after the attack with articles on how peaceful Islam is and how the Muslim community is now afraid of reprisals in the form of Islamophobia. Well, if it had nothing to do with Islam, can someone please explain to me why the Muslim community is always afraid of Islamophobia after jihad attacks? Anyways, this narrative is set on a rinse and repeat cycle, and after every violent jihad attack in the West, this is what we're exposed to. Now look, I don't want to live in an Islamic land, but Islam definitely wants to take Canada over and make it Islamic. So we have a choice. We either let Islam take over and submit, or we criticize Islam and call out the politicians and the media outlets who are betraying us now. I said at the start that Islamophobia is a weapon used against us in the West. Well, the Islamophobia accusation is one of the weapons used in the whole jihad arsenal. It's quieter than jihad terror, but the actual attacks, but it's no less dangerous in the efforts to Islamicize the West, so we need to call it out. Now, let me know what you think in the comments about all this. I've added in the description my email address. If anybody has any questions, wants to send me stories or anything like that, please feel free to email me. And I hope everybody has a great day, and see you in the next one.